Alexander Simon, and this is the first journey of Soul Animal, where we explore the most extraordinary connections between humans and the animal kingdom. Prepare to question everything you believe about reality. On a cold October morning in 1963, Sarah Peterson was preparing coffee in her kitchen in Salem, Massachusetts, when she heard something that would change her life forever. A metallic, rhythmic, insistent sound. Tap, tap, 13 precise. Strikes against her window glass. When she turned to investigate, she saw something that chilled her blood. A black crow, larger than any bird she had ever seen, was perched on the windowsill, methodically tapping its beak against the glass. These weren't random pecks. It was a pattern, a code, a message. Sarah counted the taps aloud. 1, 2, 3, single quotes until reaching 13. Then the crow stopped. It looked directly into her eyes for exactly 15 seconds. Yes, she timed it, and flew toward the cemetery at the end of the street. 3 hours and 47 minutes later, the phone rang. It was Salem General Hospital. Her husband, Robert Peterson, had suffered a fatal accident at work. The time of death? Exactly when the crow flew away. Coincidence? Today, over the next 80 minutes, you'll discover it wasn't. You'll dive into a world where crows aren't just birds, but messengers between dimensions. Where science meets the supernatural. Where death and life connect through creatures that see beyond the veil separating our world from the other side. To understand Sarah Peterson's story, we must first comprehend the millennial relationship between crows and humanity. These extraordinary creatures have inhabited our planet for more than 17 million years. They witnessed dinosaurs emerge and disappear. They observed human evolution from its beginnings. And in every culture, in every civilization, in every corner of the world, crows have always been associated with the mystical, the supernatural, the threshold between life and death. In Norse mythology, Odin, the father of all gods, possessed two ravens, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory. Every day at dawn, these ravens flew through the 9 realms, collecting information about mortals and immortals, the living and the dead. At dusk, they returned whispering in his ears the secrets of the universe. For the Celts, crows were messengers of Morrigan, the triple goddess of war, fate, and death. She appeared on battlefields in the form of a crow, choosing who would live and who would die. Warriors encountered crows before decisive battles. Seeing them was an omen of victory or defeat. The Native Americans of the Northwest Coast venerated the raven as a creator of the world. According to their legends, it was a raven that brought light to humanity, stealing the sun from a greedy chief and releasing it to illuminate the world. But this same creature was also known as the bearer of messages from the dead, capable of traveling between the world of the living and the realm of spirits. In ancient Japan, the Yatagarasu, a 3-legged crow, was considered a divine messenger. According to Shinto mythology, this crow guided Japan's first emperor, Emu, through treacherous terrain to his capital. Even today, the Yatagarasu is a Japanese national symbol. Australian Aborigines tell stories of the ancestral crow, a primordial entity that shaped the landscape during the Dreamtime. This powerful being not only created mountains and rivers, but also established the laws that govern life and death. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, a raven was the first creature sent by Noah to find dry land after the flood, while the dove returned with an olive branch symbolizing hope. The raven never came back. Some say it still flies through the world, carrying messages between heaven and earth. But why crows? What is it about these birds that awaken such fascination and terror? The answer begins in the very structure of their brains. Crows possess a proportionally larger brain than most birds, with a highly developed prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for planning, decision-making, and solving complex problems. Dr. Nathan Emery from Queen Mary University of London spent 2 decades studying crow cognition. His discoveries are revolutionary. Crows demonstrate intelligence comparable to a 7-year-old child. They use tools, solve multi-step puzzles, recognize human faces, and transmit this information to their offspring, essentially creating a knowledge culture that passes from generation to generation. Even more fascinating, crows demonstrate something scientists call theory of mind, the ability to understand that other beings have thoughts, intentions, and knowledge different from their own. This ability, which we believe to be exclusively human, allows crows to anticipate behaviors and even manipulate other animals and humans. In 2018, a groundbreaking study published in Nature magazine revealed that crows experience something similar to human dreams during REM sleep. They dream about future events, about places they've never visited, about other crows they've met. Dr. Oner Gunterkun from Ruhr University Bochum discovered that crows can even simulate future scenarios in their dreams, preparing themselves for situations that haven't happened yet. Now imagine, if crows can anticipate the future, dream about non-existent events, and understand the minds of other beings, could they also perceive energies, patterns, or frequencies that we humans cannot detect? The Peterson family was about to find out. Sarah Peterson, born Sarah O'Connor in 1925, grew up in an Irish-American family in Boston. Her maternal grandmother, Bridget O'Connor, had emigrated from County Cork, Ireland in 1895, bringing with her more than just personal belongings. She brought stories, legends, and a heritage that the Peterson family would take generations to fully understand. Bridget was what the Irish called a bean fisa, a wise woman. She possessed ancestral knowledge about signs, omens, and the ability to read messages in nature. In her diary, written in a mixture of English and Irish Gaelic, she meticulously documented her experiences with what she called Endov Scalai, the black storytellers. The crows. The first entry in Bridget's diary dates from March 23, 1896. She writes, 3 crows landed on the roof of our new house in Boston this morning. They remained there for exactly 9 minutes, then flew directly east. Patrick said there, just birds looking for food, but I know better. They are acknowledging us, establishing connection. The ancient alliance continues, even in this new land. The ancient alliance Bridget referred to was a family tradition that went back centuries in Ireland. The O'Connors were known as Caran Duv, human crows, people who maintained a special connection with these mystical birds. According to family oral tradition, this bond began during the Great Irish Famine of 1845 to 1852. During those terrible years, when 1 million Irish died of hunger and disease, Seamus O'Connor, Bridget's great-grandfather, worked as a gravedigger. In the small town of Skibbereen, one of the areas most devastated by the famine, Seamus noticed that crows always appeared before he was called to bury someone. Not after. Before. One specific crow, whom Seamus nicknamed Dubhan, Little Black One, began visiting him every morning. Dubhan would perch on his house's fence and emit a specific number of caws. Seamus discovered, through painful experience, that the number of caws corresponded exactly to the number of bodies he would be called to bury that day. Initially skeptical, Seamus began documenting these encounters. Within 6 months, Dubhan's accuracy was 100%, 0 errors. When Dubhan cawed 5 times, exactly 5 people died that day. When he cawed once, only 1 death occurred. On days when Dubhan appeared but remained silent, no one died in Skibbereen. The connection deepened when Seamus realized he could ask Dubhan specific questions. If he asked, "Will the Murphy family make it through this winter?" the crow would respond with caws or silence, indicating life or death. If he asked about his own future, Dubhan would fly in circles, which Seamus interpreted as information not available or uncertain future. This ability saved lives. Seamus began discreetly warning families when Dubhan indicated imminent Danger. Many managed to prepare, seek preventive medical help, or even emigrate before tragedy struck them. Bridget, Seamus's daughter, inherited this connection. In her diary, she describes how crows regularly found her, bringing what she called messages from the other side. When her younger sister Eileen was sick with tuberculosis in 1889, a crow appeared at Eileen's bedroom window and remained there for 3 consecutive days. On the 4th day, Eileen passed away. The crow disappeared at the exact moment of her death. When Bridget married Paddy O'Connor and emigrated to America, she believed she had left this heritage behind. She was wrong. The crows found her in Boston. In 1901, when Bridget was pregnant with her first daughter, Mary, who would become Sarah's mother, crows began appearing regularly at her new house in Boston's North End. Bridget writes, "They found me. Even here, 3,000 miles from home, they found me. The connection cannot be broken by oceans or borders. It's something deeper. Something in the blood." Mary O'Connor Peterson, Sarah's mother, grew up hearing these stories as grandma's fairy tales. Mary was a practical, educated woman who worked as a nurse at Massachusetts General Hospital. She didn't believe in superstitions. Until 1943. In December 1943, Mary was working the night shift when a crow began tapping on the 4th floor window of the hospital. Absolutely unusual behavior. The crow continued tapping for 15 minutes. Disturbed, Mary opened the window. The crow entered, flew directly to room 412, where a 67-year-old man with pneumonia was hospitalized, perched on the headboard of his bed, and remained there in silence. Mary tried to shoo the crow away, but it refused to move. Other nurses came to help, but the crow seemed motionless like a statue. 2 hours later, the patient in room 412 died peacefully in his sleep. At the exact moment of his death, the crow flew back to the window and disappeared into the night. This incident forced Mary to confront the family heritage she had spent decades denying. She began paying attention to the crows, and they began paying attention to her. During the following years, Mary documented at least 12 incidents where crows appeared before significant deaths in her life. When her father, Paddy, died in 1947, 3 crows perched on her house's roof the morning of his death and remained there until the funeral. When her mother-in-law died in 1951, a crow appeared at the kitchen window every day during the week before her death, but Mary kept these experiences secret. She was a respected healthcare professional in an era when any mention of the supernatural could destroy a career. She never told these stories to her daughter Sarah. Sarah Peterson grew up completely unaware of the family heritage. To her, crows were just birds. Intelligent, perhaps, but just birds. She studied English literature at Wellesley College, married Robert Peterson, an engineer from General Electric, and established a perfectly normal life in the suburbs of Salem until that October morning in 1963, when the heritage she was unaware of finally found her. October 16, 1963, a Tuesday that began like any other in Sarah Peterson's life. Robert had left for work at 7:30, as he had done every day for 15 years. Sarah was planning to meet her friend Helen for lunch, then visit the library to return some books. A perfectly normal routine in a perfectly organized life. At 9:47 in the morning, Sarah remembers the exact time because she had just checked the kitchen clock to calculate when she should leave to meet Helen. She heard the first sound. Tap. A metallic strike against the glass of the window that faced the backyard. Sarah was washing dishes and initially ignored the sound, assuming it was a branch hitting the window because of the wind. But then she heard it again, tap, and again. Tap. It was too rhythmic, too intentional to be caused by the wind. Drying her hands on her apron, Sarah approached the window. What she saw made her instinctively step back. A crow, but not just any crow, was perched on the windowsill, looking directly at her. It was an extraordinarily large bird, with feathers that seemed to absorb the morning light rather than reflect. Its eyes weren't the common black of crows, but a deep, almost iridescent black that seemed to contain infinite depths. The crow tapped its beak against the glass once more. Tap. Then it stopped and tilted its head to the side, as if studying Sarah with scientific curiosity. Sarah felt strangely hypnotized by the bird's gaze. It was as if the crow could see through her, as if it knew secrets about her that she herself didn't know. Then the crow began its performance. It tapped its beak against the glass in a deliberate sequence. Tap, pause, tap, pause, tap. Sarah found herself involuntarily counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. After the 13th tap, the crow stopped completely. It remained motionless for exactly 15 seconds. Sarah counted, fascinated despite her growing discomfort. Then, without warning, the crow took flight. But it didn't fly randomly. It flew in a straight line, directly over Sarah's house, toward Greenlawn Cemetery, which was approximately half a kilometer away. Sarah remained at the window for several minutes after the crow disappeared, trying to process what she had just witnessed. There was something deeply disturbing about the precision and intentionality of the bird's behavior. It didn't seem natural. It seemed communicative, trying to dismiss these irrational thoughts. Sarah returned to her morning routine. She finished washing the dishes, tidied the house, chose clothes for lunch with Helen, but she couldn't shake the image of those deep black eyes, nor the feeling that something had fundamentally changed in her life during those few minutes. At 11:15, Sarah was applying makeup in the bathroom mirror when she heard the phone ring. It was Helen, canceling lunch because her young daughter had fallen ill during the night. Sarah suggested they meet the following week and hung up, feeling slightly irritated by the change of plans. She decided to use the free time to organize the bedroom closet, a task she had been postponing for weeks. It was while folding sweaters that the phone rang again, 12:34 in the afternoon. Sarah remembers the time because she looked at the bedside clock when she got up to answer. It was Dr. Margaret Hendricks from the emergency room at Salem General Hospital. Her voice was professional but gentle, with the carefully modulated tone that doctors use when they need to deliver devastating news. "Mrs. Peterson? This is Dr. Hendricks from Salem General Hospital. I need to speak with you about your husband, Robert Peterson." Sarah's world began to tilt. What happened? Is he okay? "Mrs. Peterson, I'm very sorry to inform you that your husband was the victim of a serious industrial accident at General Electric this morning. He was brought here by ambulance, but unfortunately we were unable to save him. He passed away at 10:02 this morning, 10:02 in the morning." Sarah quickly calculated. The crow had flown from her window at 10:02. At the exact moment of Robert's death, a crow had flown from her house toward the cemetery. The next few hours passed in a blur of shock, tears, and practical decisions that needed to be made. Sarah called her mother, who drove immediately from Boston to be with her. She called Robert's brother in Chicago, made initial arrangements for the funeral, signed papers at the hospital, identified her husband's body. It was only that night, when her mother had finally managed to get her to eat something and take a mild sedative, that Sarah remembered the crow. Lying in the bed she had shared with Robert for 15 years, staring at the ceiling in the dark, she relived every second of that bizarre encounter at the kitchen window. 13 taps, 15 seconds of eye contact, direct flight to the cemetery. At 10:02 in the morning, Sarah tried to convince herself it was coincidence. Crows are intelligent, opportunistic birds. There was probably something interesting at the cemetery. Food, nesting material, other crows. The timing was just a cruel and meaningless coincidence. But a part of her, a part she tried desperately to ignore, knew it wasn't coincidence. There was something deeply intentional about that encounter. The crow wasn't just passing by, it was delivering a message. A warning. An omen. The next morning, when her mother was preparing breakfast, Sarah told her about the crow. She expected her mother, a practical and scientific woman, to reassure her with rational explanations. Instead, Mary Peterson turned pale. She dropped the coffee cup she was holding, which shattered on the kitchen floor. Without saying a word, she went to the suitcase she had brought from Boston, opened a side compartment, and withdrew an old, faded diary. "Sarah," said her mother with a trembling voice, "there's something about our family that I never told you. Something I hoped I would never have to tell." That's how Sarah Peterson discovered she was the fourth generation of O'Connor Peterson, women to be visited by messenger crows, and that her life, which she believed to be perfectly normal and predictable, was about to become something extraordinary and inexplicable. Bridget O'Connor's diary was a brown leather book, yellowed by time, with pages that creaked when opened. Mary Peterson had kept this diary for more than 20 years, since her grandmother's death in 1942, without ever mentioning its existence. To Sarah, now sitting at Sarah's kitchen table the morning after Robert's death, Mary finally revealed the secrets she had spent decades hiding. "Your great-great-grandmother Bridget began writing this diary in 1895, when she still lived in Ireland," Mary explained, her hands trembling slightly as she opened the book. She continued writing until a few days before she died. There are more than 40 years of experiences documented here. Sarah, still in shock from Robert's loss, watched her mother leaf through the handwritten pages in a mixture of English and Irish Gaelic. Bridget's handwriting was precise and elegant, typical of a 19th century education. But what was written was anything but typical. "Listen to this entry from April 15, 1897, said Mary, translating from Gaelic. "Dubhan came to me this morning, bringing news of Seamus McGrath. 3 ravens landed on the McGrath house roof during the night. I visited Molly McGrath this afternoon. She said Seamus has been feeling chest pains for a week, but refuses to see the doctor. I warned her about the ravens. She promised to convince him to go to town tomorrow." Mary turned the page. "Here's the entry from April 18th. Seamus McGrath died this morning of a heart attack. Molly said he had agreed to see the doctor, but waited 2 more days. The ravens knew. They always know." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The similarity to her own experience was undeniable. "Mother, you never told me about this. Why?" Mary closed the diary for a moment, looking out the kitchen window, the same window where the raven had appeared to Sarah the day before. "Because I hoped that the inheritance had skipped you. I hoped you could have a normal life without carrying this burden." "Burden? Sarah, you need to understand. This ability, if we can call it, that is not a blessing. It's a heavy responsibility. Knowing about deaths before they happen. Receiving messages from creatures that shouldn't be able to communicate with us. It changes a person. It changes how you see the world, how you relate to other people." Mary reopened the diary and continued reading. Here's an entry from 1903, after Bridget had moved to Boston. "The American Dubhan found me. It's different from the Irish one, but carries the same ancestral wisdom. He brought me visions of Patrick Murphy at O'Sullivan's Tavern. I saw him falling, clutching his chest, the other men panicking. I went to the tavern tonight and warned Patrick discreetly. He laughed at me, said he was perfectly healthy. 2 days later, Patrick Murphy died of a heart attack at O'Sullivan's Tavern, exactly as I had seen." Sarah absorbed this information in silence. Then she asked, "And you, Mother? Do you also receive these messages?" Mary sighed deeply. "Yes, Sarah, I do. It started when I was about your current age. The first raven came to me at the hospital where I work in 1943. Since then, they appear regularly. Not always before. Deaths, sometimes they bring other messages. Warnings about illnesses, about important changes, about people who need help. Why did you never tell me? Because I wanted you to have a choice. Bridget never had a choice. She grew up knowing she was different, carrying the weight of knowledge she couldn't share with anyone. I grew up knowing too, but at least I had years of normal life before everything began. I wanted you to have that too. Mary turned several pages of the diary. But there's something else you need to know, Sarah. Something Bridget discovered over the years. The Ravens don't choose just anyone. There's something specific in our lineage. Something that makes us receptive to their messages. What do you mean? Bridget spent years trying to understand why the Ravens chose her. She spoke with other Irish people who came to America, researched our genealogy, studied ancient traditions. What she discovered was extraordinary. Mary found a specific page in the diary and began to read. I discovered the truth about our lineage today. I spoke with Siobhan McBride, the old Bean Fisa from Donegal, who lives in South Boston. She recognized our heritage immediately. She said the O'Connors descend from a line of Druids, the ancient Celtic priests who served as intermediaries between the world of the living and the world of the dead. These Druids had a special alliance with ravens, who served as their spiritual messengers. Sarah felt as if the ground was moving beneath her feet. Druids, mother, this sounds fantastic? Impossible? I know, but keep listening. Mary continued reading. Siobhan explained that when the Romans and later the Christians persecuted the Druids, many fled to the remote mountains and islands of Ireland. There, they preserved their knowledge and abilities in secret, passing them from mother to daughter through generations. The Ravens, faithful to the Druids, continued to serve these lineages through the centuries. Mary turned a few more pages. Here's an entry from 1923. I understand now why the Ravens chose us. It's not just genetic inheritance, it's a spiritual responsibility that passes from generation to generation. We are guardians of a bridge between worlds, keeping alive an ancient connection between the living and the dead. The Ravens are our partners in this sacred mission. Sarah had been silent for several minutes, processing these extraordinary revelations. Finally she asked, so the raven that visited me yesterday, it wasn't just announcing Robert's death, it was recruiting me? Yes, Mary answered simply. It was recognizing you as the next guardian of the lineage. And now that contact has been established, other ravens will come. They will bring messages, ask for favors, seek your guidance to help others. But I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to interpret their messages or how to help anyone. Mary placed her hand over Sarah's. Bridget didn't know how in the beginning either. Neither did I. It's something you learn over time, through experience. The ravens are patient. They will teach you. At that moment, as if summoned by the conversation, a familiar sound echoed through the kitchen. Tap, tap. Both women turned to the window. There was another raven smaller than yesterday's, with distinctive gray markings on its wings. This new raven tapped its beak against the glass 5 times, then flew to perch on a branch of a garden tree, where it remained watching them. This isn't the same one from yesterday, Sarah observed. No, Mary agreed. This is a new one. And by the pattern of taps 5, I'd say there are 5 people who will need your help in the coming days. Sarah looked at her mother with a mixture of terror and fascination. How do you know that? 45 years of experience, dear. 45 years learning the language of ravens. The raven in the tree cawed once, loud and clear, then flew away. And now, said Mary, closing Bridget's diary, your education begins. 3 days had passed since Sarah Peterson discovered her ancestral inheritance. 3 days of mourning for Robert, of intense conversations with her mother about family traditions she never knew existed. and of a growing awareness that her life had changed forever. On Saturday morning, October 19, 1963, Sarah was sitting in the kitchen drinking coffee and trying to process everything she had learned when she heard the sound she was beginning to recognize. Tap, 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 tap. 7 knocks. This time, Sarah counted automatically. Her mother had explained that numbers always meant something. When she approached the window, she saw the same crow from 3 days before, the one with gray markings on its wings. But this time, the crow didn't fly away after delivering its message. Instead, it remained on the windowsill, tilting its head from side to side, as if waiting for a response. "Mom!" Sarah called upstairs, where Mary was sorting Robert's clothes for donation. "The crow is here again." Mary came downstairs quickly and positioned herself beside Sarah at the window. The crow looked at both of them, then tapped its beak 7 more times against the glass. 14, Mary murmured. 7 plus 7, this is urgent. How do you know? When they repeat the pattern, it means time is running out. Someone is in imminent danger. As if it had heard the conversation, the crow flew to the garden and perched near the front gate. It remained there, looking toward the street, then turned its gaze back to the women at the window. "It wants us to follow it," Mary said with certainty. "How can you be sure?" "Because that's how it works, Sarah. They show us where we need to go." Reluctant but curious, Sarah put on a coat and went out to the garden with her mother. The crow immediately took flight, but instead of disappearing, it flew slowly toward the street, stopping to perch on lampposts and tree branches, always waiting for them to follow. The unusual procession, 2 women walking down the street following a crow, lasted approximately 15 minutes and covered 6 blocks, ending in front of a blue Victorian house on Elm Street. The crow perched on the roof of the house and cawed 7 times. "Here," said Mary. "This is where someone needs help." Sarah looked at the house. It was well maintained, with an immaculate garden and lace curtains in the windows. There was nothing obviously wrong or concerning. "Mom, we can't just knock on strangers' doors and say a crow sent us." "Not directly," Mary agreed. "But Bridget, develop strategies for approaching these situations. You invent a plausible excuse to check on people's welfare." Before Sarah could protest, Mary was already walking toward the front door. She rang the doorbell and waited. A few moments later, the door opened, revealing a woman of approximately 60 years, gray hair pulled back in a bun, wearing an apron over a simple dress. "Can I help you?" the woman asked politely but cautiously. "Hello," said Mary with a warm smile. "My name is Mary Peterson, and this is my daughter Sarah. We live over on Oak Street. Sorry to bother you, but we were walking by and noticed your mailbox was a bit tilted. My late father-in-law was a carpenter and always taught us to offer help with small repairs to our neighbors." It was a completely invented lie, but it sounded natural and convincing. The woman seemed to relax a bit. "Oh, how kind of you. I'm Dorothy Hutchins. And yes, my husband Harold noticed the mailbox last week, but well, he hasn't been feeling very well lately." "I'm sorry to hear that," said Mary, and Sarah could tell her mother was delicately probing for information. "Nothing serious, I hope." Dorothy hesitated, then seemed to decide she needed to talk to someone. "To be honest, I'm worried. Harold is 65 and has always been strong as a bull. But for the past 2 weeks, he's been complaining of chest pains. Says it's just indigestion, refuses completely to see a doctor." Sarah felt her heart race. Chest pains, an elderly man reluctant to seek medical help. The pattern was becoming clear. "Dorothy," Mary said gently, "I work as a nurse at Massachusetts General Hospital. Chest pains in men Harold's age shouldn't be ignored. Even if it's just indigestion, it's better to be sure." I know, Dorothy sighed. "But Harold is stubborn. He grew up during the Depression, you know. For him, Doctors cost money we don't have to spend, and real men endure pain without complaining. At that moment, a male voice shouted from inside the house, "Dorothy, who's there?" "It's our neighbors, Harold. They came to ask about the mailbox." A man appeared behind Dorothy, tall, broad-shouldered, but with a worrying pallor and visible perspiration on his forehead, despite the cool October weather. "Harold Hutchins," he introduced himself, extending a hand that trembled slightly when he greeted Mary and Sarah. Sarah observed Harold with growing alarm. Even without medical training, she could see obvious signs of physical distress. The slightly labored breathing, the rigid posture as if he were protecting his chest, the cold sweat. "Mr. Hutchins," Mary said professionally, "excuse me if I'm being intrusive, but as a nurse, I can't help but notice you seem to be in discomfort. Are you experiencing any pain right now?" Harold seemed irritated by the observation. "It's just indigestion. I ate something that didn't agree with me at breakfast." "Harold has been having these episodes for 2 weeks," Dorothy explained, ignoring her husband's warning look. Mary exchanged a significant glance with Sarah. "Mr. Hutchins, I know it may seem excessive, but as a healthcare professional, I need to suggest you seek medical attention immediately. The symptoms your wife is describing could indicate heart problems." "Nonsense," Harold grumbled. "I've worked in construction for 40 years. I know the difference between real pain and a little heartburn." At that moment, exactly as if it were part of an orchestrated performance, Harold doubled over, clutching his chest with both hands. His face contorted in pain, and he began breathing heavily. "Harold!" Dorothy screamed. Mary immediately went into emergency nurse mode. "Mr. Hutchins, you need to sit down now." "Dorothy, call an ambulance immediately. Dial 0 and ask the operator to connect you to the hospital." While Dorothy ran to the phone, Mary helped Harold sit on the porch steps. "Sarah, go to our house and get the nitroglycerin pills from the first aid kit in the kitchen cabinet. Quick!" Sarah ran the 6 blocks back home, found the medication, and returned in record time. When she arrived, Harold was conscious but clearly in extreme distress, and Dorothy was talking to the emergency operator. "The ambulance is on its way," Dorothy informed them, tears streaming down her face. Mary administered the sublingual nitroglycerin and monitored Harold's vital signs as best she could without equipment. "Your blood pressure is high and your pulse is irregular. We definitely need to get you to the hospital." 12 minutes later, the ambulance arrived. The paramedics confirmed Mary's assessment. Harold was having a moderate heart attack. If he hadn't received immediate treatment, it could have been fatal. As Harold was loaded into the ambulance, Dorothy grabbed Mary's and Sarah's hands. "You saved his life. If you hadn't shown up here." "That's what neighbors are for," Mary said simply. After the ambulance left and Dorothy took a taxi to the hospital, Mary and Sarah walked slowly back home. The crow had disappeared, its mission accomplished. "How did you know?" Sarah asked. "How did you know exactly what to say, how to approach the situation?" "Experience," Mary replied, "and guidance. The crows don't just lead us to people who need help, they also give us instincts about how to help." Sarah looked at her mother with new respect and understanding. "How many lives have you saved over the years?" "I don't know," Mary said honestly. "I never counted. But Bridget kept records. In her 40 years following the crows, she documented more than 80 lives saved. 80 families who didn't lose loved ones because the crows intervened." That night, Sarah began her own diary. The first entry, dated October 19, 1963, simply read, "Harold Hutchins, heart attack prevented. The crows were right. My new life has begun." Sarah Peterson lived to be 89 years old. In her 52 years as a guardian of the crows, she meticulously documented every encounter, every mission, Every life saved or comforted through the guidance of these extraordinary creatures. Her final diary contains 1,247 entries minus 1,247 times that crows brought messages, warnings, or pleas for help. She never married again. When asked about this in an interview for the local newspaper on her 80th birthday, Sarah replied, "My life took a different path after Robert's death. I had responsibilities that I couldn't share with someone who wouldn't understand." But Sarah was not alone. Over the years, she discovered that there were other guardians scattered around the world. Women, always women, who maintained similar connections with crows. Through careful correspondence, she built an international network of corveras. Crow women, as they discreetly called themselves, Margaret Chun, in San Francisco, descendant of an ancient Chinese lineage that had maintained connections with crows for more than 1,000 years. Astrid Larsen, in Stockholm, whose Nordic family had served the crows since the Viking era. Maria Santos, in Mexico, linked to Aztec traditions that venerated crows as messengers of the gods. All reported similar experiences, crows that appeared with warnings, that guided them to people in danger, that seemed to operate with knowledge, that transcended normal human understanding. In 1987, when Sarah turned 62, something extraordinary happened. Her niece Jennifer, daughter of her younger brother, came to visit her during summer vacation. Jennifer was 16 years old and going through the typical adolescent rebellious phase when one July morning, she woke up screaming, "Aunt Sarah!" She cried, running downstairs. "I had the strangest dream. There were crows everywhere, and they were trying to tell me something about Mr. Morrison down the street." Sarah felt a familiar chill. Morrison was a 78-year-old widower who had lived alone for 5 years since his wife's death. "What exactly did the crows say in your dream?" "They didn't speak with words," Jennifer explained, still visibly disturbed. "It was more like images in my mind. I saw Mr. Morrison fallen on his kitchen floor, and there was a horrible smell, like gas." Sarah didn't hesitate. She grabbed her keys and drove immediately to Morrison's house, with Jennifer in the passenger seat. When they arrived, they found the house too quiet. Sarah knocked on the door, shouted Morrison's name, but got no response. "Call the fire department," Sarah instructed Jennifer. "Tell them there's suspected gas leak." The firefighters arrived 15 minutes later and found Morrison unconscious on the kitchen floor, exactly as Jennifer had seen in her dream. A leak in the old stove had been filling the house with gas for hours. Another 30 minutes and Morrison would have died. That night, Sarah sat down with Jennifer and told her the entire family story, about Bridget, about Mary, about the crow inheritance. Jennifer listened in silence, then asked, "So now it's my turn?" "It seems so," Sarah replied. "The inheritance chooses when it wants to skip a generation and when it wants to continue. Apparently, it has decided it's time to have a new guardian." Jennifer Peterson Williams, as she came to be called after marriage, became the 5th generation of crow guardians in the family. She developed abilities that surprised even Sarah. Not only did she receive messages through dreams, but she could also, apparently, communicate directly with crows through a primitive form of telepathy. Under Jennifer's guidance, the Guardian Network evolved. They began using modern technology, phones, then email, then internet, to coordinate global efforts. When natural disasters approached, crows around the world began sending warnings through their guardians. Earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions. The guardians often managed to alert authorities days or even weeks before events happened. Of course, they weren't always believed. But sometimes, wise authorities listened and lives were saved. In 2019, 3 days before COVID-19 was officially identified in Wuhan, guardians around the world reported crows acting extremely agitated, flying in unusual patterns, and making sounds they had never heard before. Jennifer documented, "The crows are warning us about something global, something that will change everything. A disease, perhaps? Something airborne? Sarah Peterson passed away peacefully on March 15, 2014, at age 89, on the morning of her death. Jennifer reported that hundreds of crows gathered at the hospital where Sarah was admitted. They remained in absolute silence on the surrounding rooftops and trees until exactly the moment of her death, when they all took flight simultaneously, creating a black cloud that circled the hospital 3 times before dispersing. The last entry in Sarah's diary, written just 2 days before her death, read, "The crows told me that my work here is complete. Jennifer is ready to lead. The bridge between worlds will remain intact. The ancient alliance continues." Today, in 2025, Jennifer Peterson Williams, now 54 years old, continues the work begun by her great-great-grandmother Bridget more than 130 years ago. She trains new guardians, coordinates the global network, and keeps alive a tradition that connects our modern reality with ancestral wisdom that humanity had almost forgotten. And the crows? They continue flying, watching, protecting, waiting patiently for the next moment when their ancient wisdom will be needed to guide humanity through its darkest hours. Because some connections transcend time, space, and death. Some alliances are eternal. And sometimes, when you hear the caw of a crow or see it watching you with those deep black eyes, remember, perhaps it's not just a bird. Perhaps it's a messenger. Perhaps it's time to pay attention to what it's trying to tell you. The next time you see a crow, stop, observe, listen. You never know when you might be chosen to become the next bridge between worlds.